Welcome back, my friends, to the One Fear Per Year podcast. I am really excited. You guys are going to love today's episode because I have the one and only Dr. Michael Amster on with me. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Janice. It's so great to do this podcast with you. We've been friends for about 10 years, so it's like really just been a thrill to watch you grow and mature into the work you're doing in the world. And it's really a pleasure to meet your community of listeners. So thanks for the opportunity to be here today.
Oh, I know. We met actually. I am a Spanish interpreter and I went in for an assignment. I think it was a medical evaluation, and Dr. Amster was there. And so, yeah, we've seen each other throughout the years during these medical evaluations. And what I love about you, besides the work that you do with your patients, and you're just very caring and asking a lot of questions and things like that, but it's when I found out that you came out with this book called The Power of Awe. So, can you just tell us a little bit about that book and how that relates to fear?
Sure, I'd love to talk about it. As you mentioned, I'm a medical doctor. I'm a pain specialist in family medicine, boarded as well. And I've had a long time interest in mindfulness, and I've been running for many years these chronic pain groups where I teach mindfulness-based stress reduction and other types of techniques to help patients with managing their pain. Which, of course, if people are in chronic pain, they're often facing a lot of fear, which sort of relates to the work that you're doing as well. So about 7 years ago, I had a conversation with a colleague of mine. His name is Jake Eagle. He's a psychotherapist in Hawaii. And we've both been mindfulness teachers for many years, and we were finding that our patients were really struggling with having a sustained, regular mindfulness practice. Like people know that mindfulness is good for our mental health, help us, manage our fear, that kind of anxiety states of mind. But people really struggle with having a regular practice. So Jake and I thought about, is there a way that we could come up with a very powerful practice that would help people manage their chronic pain or their anxieties or their fears, their loneliness, all their kind of these ills of being human, without having to spend all that time because we're so busy in our lives today with all the technology and distractions we have. So I flew out to Hawaii where Jake lives, and we started investigating with what we called then microdoses of mindfulness. We were kind of interested in finding microdoses and what would be like the ideal technique to help people reset their nervous systems and get out of that fight flight state into a place of calm and ease, of pure presence and peace. And so we actually stumbled upon the emotion of awe, A.W.E. It's a very powerful emotion, and we came up with a mindfulness practice. We call it the A method, where we teach people how to experience brief moments of awe in the ordinary. So you don't have to go to the Grand Canyon or to some like insane rock, Taylor Swift rock concert to experience a moment of awe. Like we can actually have a moment of awe right now, in the space that we're in, and like to tune our eyes and our ears to really appreciate the wonder and the beauty of everyday moments of our lives. So me being a medical doctor and Jake also interested in research, we partnered with the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley with Dacher Keltner. He's what we call in the awe field. He's the granddaddy of awe. He really started doing this work about 20 years ago at UC Berkeley, and we partnered with his lab, and we've done now multiple large scale studies finding that this practice is actually very effective at lowering anxiety, depression, chronic pain, loneliness, and improves wellness and overall life satisfaction. So it's been a really interesting journey over the last 6 years to kind of become now really one of the leading experts in this field of awe.
Ah, ah.
Uh,
I didn't even plan that. It just came out, see? So give myself and the listeners a couple of quick tips in what this looks like practically. Is there anything that I know you're saying tuning in? How do they do that? What's a quick tip or two about this methodology.
Sure, I'd love to actually just teach people the method. It's really quite easy to do, and we can do it together right now. Um, but we were able to turn the method into a 300-page book, even though it literally takes 15 to 20 seconds to do. We go into the science of awe and explain a whole model around the nervous system and understanding our physiology around fear and the fight response, the sympathetic response. So we go into the biochemistry. It's a really cool book that explores um, topics of health and wellness and emotional health and consciousness. It's really a really deep dive into these topics. So we came up with this technique. We call it the A method, and we actually use the word A.W.E. We broke it into an acronym. So there's these 3 steps to have a moment of awe in the ordinary. So I'll walk the listeners through it right now, and then we'll get to hear how it goes for you. Um, so I'm just going to explain what the 3 letters stand for. So A stands for attention, and what we're doing is we're bringing our brief, undivided attention to something that we value, we appreciate, or find amazing. And so in the space that you're in, I can't really see the space you're in. I know you're there's an ocean behind you, but you're probably in your office. And so there might be a piece of art. I'm looking out in front of me here and I have this like cup filled with all these different colored Sharpies. And I'm just kind of in awe of the beauty and like the utility of what these pens do. Or I could actually be in awe of scissors. I mean, imagine I do surgery, but for the ordinary person, like if we didn't have this technology of scissors, like it's actually quite an awe-inspiring creation. So find something that you can find to be potentially awe-inspiring. And then we're going to bring the fearless notes. Great.
This is right in front of me. For those of you listening that can't see, it's this little book that says Fearless Notes to Share. And it's just all sorts of little encouraging notes. So this is my awe
Yeah.
attention getter.
It's your attention getter for your awe moment. And then the W stands for wait. And basically what we're doing is we're just pausing for a period of like a cycle of a breath or two. And it's an opportunity for us to really savor and to enjoy this moment. Like we're intentionally letting out all distractions. We're bringing our full undivided attention to one thing, this thing that we're finding awe-inspiring, and we're getting to soak it in. We're just getting to really enjoy it and to fully be with that moment. And then the E stands for actually 2 things. One is a nice big exhale out. When we take a big breath in and a long exhale out, we are expanding our diaphragm, which is where the vagus nerve attaches to. The vagus nerve is actually one of the biggest nerves in the body. It operates and controls our autonomic nervous system, that what we call the sympathetic, which is the fight flight response when we're under threat, and the parasympathetic, which is the opposite, where it's the calming, resting state of repair and digestion and healing. So when we stimulate our vagus nerve, we're actually stimulating the parasympathetic response and calming down the sympathetic. And it's a very powerful way of immediately resetting our physiology from a state of fear into a state of peace and rest and repair. And then the E also stands for an expansion, because when we have a moment of awe, if you can think back to like a big moment you've had, you often probably feel like tingles or chills, like you get excited. There's like literally a release of energy in our bodies. And so we've measured this in research studies that the little hairs on our arms actually stand up. Like we get a release of energy, of expansion energetically in our bodies. So we are just using our own physiology to really allow that to kind of accentuate and happen. So I've talked you now through the 3 steps. So let's actually have a moment of awe together, and then you can kind of share with me how it is. So again, we're bringing our attention to something that we value, appreciate, and find amazing, and just be with that. And you can breathe normally, but just we're going to pause and really enjoy and savor that moment. And take another big inhale and one long exhale out. Can even make the sound of awe.
Oh.
Letting that moment expand and fill you up. And I just invite you to close your eyes for just a moment. And notice how you feel. Notice if there's maybe a subtle change in the feeling in your body, the energy, and maybe muscles feeling more relaxed, less tense, more presence, more calmness. And then open your eyes when you're ready. And why don't you share with the community of listeners, Janice, how that was for you?
It's so amazing to me whenever I take the time to do that. I mean, that was what, 5, 8, 10 seconds maybe. And just the closing down the eyes, the breathing, the intentionality behind doing that is is so powerful. And it was interesting as I closed my eyes and I'm breathing, I had just like this intuitive thing to wanna, like, put my hand over my heart, uh, and kind of connect, I guess. I mean, I didn't do it wasn't like a real conscious thought per se, but it was just, like, wanting to connect to my heart space, and this is one of the reasons I teach yoga, I go to yoga. It every time brings me into that awe space, and plus when you include, I feel like that with movement, there's something really amazing that can happen there too. What's your experience been like with that as far as the breath to movement and the whole yoga, philosophy?
Well, I mean, definitely, as a pain specialist, I always tell my patients that movement is medicine. And it's really true. Like we have to keep our bodies in motion. Because if we don't, like joints stiffen up, like we can develop what's called a frozen shoulder and other, chronic musculoskeletal issues sort of arise by lack of movement. Like the movement creates blood flow and removal of toxins and bringing in healthy nutrients. So I'm a huge fan and also a yogi of myself. And um, it's so interesting for me. Like I always appreciate objectively, like when I do imaging studies of people that don't move, like let's say they're chronic smokers or they're just inactive and they're morbidly obese and out of shape and they're just not doing any activity. Their spines degenerate at a much faster clip than people that are yogis that I see that are in their 70s and 80s that like still have healthy spines, um, and like robust health. So yeah, movement is really crucial.
That's an interesting perspective that you have and get to see because, like you said, you see all these images, you see a lot of people, and you can very clearly see the difference. And so I'm sure that's a good thing in your own life to be like, dang, I want to keep moving. I want to do all these things so that I can enjoy more longevity. And speaking of your own personal life, how how has there been a time, a story that you have where you were really fearful to
Mhm.
do something, create something, whatever, and then, uh, what did you do to walk through it? How did you deal with fear in whatever that instance is that you wanna share?
Well, I really love that question, and it's so interesting because of the fear I had when I was younger is the reason why I ended up writing this book, um, and all this work I've done in my life in this area. So I wanted to be a doctor since I was like a 3-year-old boy. Like I loved playing doctor with my Fisher Price set, and there's nothing else I ever wanted to do with my life. And as I went through, junior high and high school, I started developing test taking anxiety. And I had a lot of fear of failure, feeling fear that I would not be able to test well enough and to get into medical school. And actually, I had a full-on panic attack, which um, was so intense and scary when I was taking the MCAT, which is the test to get into med school, the admissions test. There was like one section where I froze and my mind got hijacked, and I was um, in that full on like panic fear state. And after that experience, a friend of mine who was a meditator told me, he's like, well, I was when I realized this myself, because I didn't do well enough on the test because I sort of bombed that section when I had the panic attack, and I was going to have to take the test again. And I had a lot of fear of retaking it. And so I was at a crossroads in my life where either I had to um, take pharmaceuticals like medicines to calm my mind, or I needed to find a natural way of managing it better. And so I got into meditation. Someone told me about doing a Buddhist meditation retreat, which that sort of set my whole life in this trajectory of ultimately becoming a trained mindfulness teacher, and then ultimately doing research in this area as well and coming up with the A method. Um, so yeah, it's really been quite a phenomenal journey. And I guess looking back on it now, I can be almost really grateful for having had that fear, because it's taken my life in a trajectory that's added just so much depth and meaning and purpose. If I probably hadn't had that anxious, fearful mind, I don't know if I would have gone this direction in my life. So I'm just so grateful ultimately for what that lesson taught me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, that's just amazing. And what is your thought about medication and then these mindfulness, other natural, maybe more holistic ways to deal with that? So anybody listening that's maybe struggling with that, should I be on some sort of a medication or do a more natural path like you did?
Well, I think it's really dependent on each and everyone's story and their situation. So it's like I really can't make a blanket statement for the listeners, but um, I think that if someone is in such a compromised state, whether with depression or anxiety, they may need to be on a pharmaceutical for a period of time. And then sometimes that can calm things down enough so that when you're now working with more natural approaches, like they're actually more effective. So they can be used together in tandem. It's not like one or the other. Um, but in my experience, and I've run these 8-week long programs with patients that are struggling with chronic depression and anxiety and chronic pain and a lot of fear states. Um, People get this technique really fast. We studied this in a 21-day program for our research studies. And for example, we saw a 36% reduction in depression symptoms. And this is in a group of almost over 200 patients. In a research study, we saw um, a 25% reduction of anxiety symptoms, which I think anxiety symptoms are what people like physically feel is the fear state. So we know this very simple practice that takes literally a minute a day to do. Like we asked in our research studies, please do this 3 times a day for 15 seconds. That's it. And we saw efficacy equal to taking a pharmaceutical agent. And the really cool thing that I love about our research is that the, it's what's called a dose response. So the more times you microdose A throughout your day, the more benefit you have. So like there's no downside to doing this. So I would love to, just tell as I know we're wrapping up soon, but to suggest that your listeners go to our website, thepowerofawe.com. We have free resources and videos. We have a guide. Um, Occasionally, my co-author and I will do a class online, like a 21-day program, helping people really develop a deeper sense of the practice. And then my wife, who's also a yoga teacher and um, a mindfulness teacher, we lead in Mexico once a year an awe retreat called the Power of Awe Retreat, and it's in January of like 10th through 17th, 2026, at this really just breathtaking resort called Shinalani, just south of Puerto Vallarta. So there's information about that on our website as well.
Oh, now you
Maybe we got to
really got me.
Janice is going to come, hopefully.
Hey, if you need a translator. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. It has encouraged me because yes, I'll go do yoga and things like that, but this is something like we can do it in our car sitting at a traffic light. Maybe we can do it in when we're working in the middle of the work week and just take those micro doses of
Mhm.
awe. And I love this idea. It's practical, it's simple, it's transformative. One last question. We do have to wrap up, but no right or wrong answer. But if I ask you to give me an exact opposite word of fear in your own mind, in your own thought process, what word would you choose?
The word that came out immediately was the word love. So just feels like the complete opposite of fear is a state of love and acceptance and compassion, compassion, care, presence. All those qualities are all sort of encompassed in the experience of love.
Mm,
Self-love, love of others, receiving love, giving love.
yes,
So
absolutely. And I think that's part of why I feel like putting my hand on my heart, or that connection to that, just brings um, uh, awareness in my own self about that state of love versus the state of being in fear, which I know that state really, really well, and felt like a prison. So I am much happier when I am in a state of love. So thank you so much, Dr. Amster, for coming on here and just sharing your heart, your perspective, this great advice for our listeners and everybody out there listening. Go take 15 seconds and just micro dose it up throughout the day and see how much better you feel. And truly, just all of us doing what we can to become the best, highest versions of ourselves. Take care, everybody.
thank you so much, Janice. It's so great to be here. And I love hearing from people. So you can find me at thepowerofawe.com. We have uh, a moment of awe newsletter where we send a little moment of awe every week out. So, and please email me, michael at thepowerofawe.com if you have any questions. Thank you again.